Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw, and as ever, I'm delighted, over the moon, enraptured to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
And your partner in crime, Scott McDermott. Scott, how's it going?
I'm good, Daniel. You all right?
I like that you two are obviously in the same bedroom, but you still have that masquerade of the two laptops. That's quite cool.
The decor's not quite the same.
You both okay, yeah?
Go to sit down for dinner at us.
I just need to get something rustled up in the kitchen. Wee man's upstairs. Yeah, good. Before we go on any further, did you take my recommendation about Mobland?
I've been watching it, Scott.
I haven't yet, no.
Oh man,
it's really good, isn't it? It's
only just in my mind because it's on every Sunday, and you need to wait another week for the next one. That's superb. Brilliant.
The last one's next week.
As I thought that might be. I'm already looking forward to it.
Channel is it Netflix?
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus, aye. No, it's really good. It's definitely worth a watch.
Anyway, sorry, I digress. Shall we go on with it?
We should get on with it. There's always plenty to talk about in the world of Scottish football. Or actually, maybe there's not a lot to talk about in the sense of the Rangers vacancy, which just seems to be never ending. I mean, I don't even know where to start with this. Scott, you wrote an opinion piece today on the Rangers quote that strangled their season and should simply never be mentioned again. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, look, we've touched on this before on here, just in terms of the time it's obviously taken to appoint a new manager. I get that obviously the club want to get it right. It's absolutely imperative they get this appointment right, given where the club is, given how far ahead Celtic are at the moment in terms of winning trophies. But no, time is getting on. Jacko's mentioned it loads on here. It just took me back to thinking about the start of last season. August, Philippe Clement had just signed his new extended contract, preparing for the first game of the season, which had already got off to a bad start, obviously, by the fact that the club couldn't play games at Ibrox. And it was just when I look back at that quote, I mean, ahead of the first game of the season, for Clement to say, no, you'll really see the best of us in October, November, December. You think back, it was astonishing, really, because it had almost the season had almost been written off before a ball had been kicked. He was talking about, I was looking at the press conference today, he was talking about how players needed time to settle in, they had young players that needed time to develop, and you felt at the time this is going to, by November time, the title could be gone, and that's the way it worked out. And listen, that obviously played a big part in Clement's downfall. And I'm not saying for definite that's going to happen again, but we're getting into that kind of territory now where it's getting so late that whenever the new man comes in, I mean, I wrote in the piece, I think it's 57 days from now until the first Champions League qualifier. I mean, that's after a new man has to come in, get unveiled, take pre-season training, play friendly games, assess the squad, decide who they want, who he doesn't want, get new players in. It just seems like such a tight turnaround. And I genuinely hope, for the club's sake, that it's not the case, but it looks like it's going to be so tight, it's going to be really rushed for Rangers to be fully prepared for these European qualifiers and for the league campaign. They do really need to get a move on and get somebody in quick.
Keith, in the comment section, friend of the show, Rangers Is He Okay, says, I know it's incomparable with regards to the two clubs, but Killie have appointed Kettlewell. Within 2 weeks of finding out McInnes would be moving on. I do think it will be Ancelotti, but it needs to be this week. We need to start recruiting players if the reports are due. We have a good budget. We need players in for the qualifier at the end of July. The latest kind of news today was that Spanish newspaper Marca saying that they believed that Davide Ancelotti had travelled to Brazil with his dad.
Just there's no sighting of him.
Exactly. Crucially, no sighting of him.
There's a lot of floating parts around this. Scott will tell you he had a similar day to me, chasing around, trying to get in front of something. just try and get the next sort of news nugget. And it's been a difficult one today. It's a bank holiday, which doesn't help probably. But look, where are we with this? Ancelotti, some reports in Spain, as you said that Davide Ancelotti was on the flight, was flying to Brazil. Others, not so sure. Certainly from the still photographs and video that has emerged from Ancelotti Senior arriving in Rio, I can't see his boy anywhere and amongst that. I think, is it Francesco Mauri, who is going to be part of his backroom team and was supposed to be part of the new look Rangers backroom team. He's there. So he's gone to South America. Now, it makes you wonder, why is Davide not there if he's not there? Has he got someone to speak to? Has he got some place to go to before he goes over for these 2 games? That could very much be the case. But you are looking at it. I think Scott's absolutely right. Listen, Barry Ferguson said it when he was in there, and he started banging the drum weeks and weeks ago, saying, by the way, guys, you have left this too late. We are leaving this too late if you want to have a realistic chance of being competitive next season. Things had to start happening 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, months ago even. So whoever it is that becomes the next Rangers manager is starting in a really difficult position. And that's why I've been a little bit critical of this process. There seems to be a real lack of urgency about it. I think that's absolutely fair to say Derek McInnes, he disappears from Kilmarnock to Tynecastle, and Billy Bowie goes out, identifies his list of sort of candidates and makes an appointment. Rangers seem to be making heavy weather of it. I don't know if it's an arrogance, but I already believe that the next manager, whoever that may be, is starting way behind the 8 ball in terms of, the players are all on holiday. How do you assess a squad that are on a beach? How do you identify what's required? How do you suss out the characters of players that aren't even in the building? Such a difficult position to be shoehorned into at such a late stage in the day, and at a point in time when Celtic are as dominant as they are. So I think it almost feels like no matter who Rangers manage to pull out the hat, they're going to be starting this job with one hand tied behind his back, in terms of trying to bridge the gap and play catch up. Because we've already kind of said on here, the Rangers fans, as much as they'll want to be patient, they won't. The patience will evaporate very quickly if the results aren't there. If Celtic are stretching out at the top of the league, as they did last season, and Rangers fans really suffered last season, as Scott said, about the fact that they couldn't even get into their own stadium. They were homeless for the first few months of the season, and they were seeing the points being frittered away and Celtic striding out in front. And if a similar thing happens, albeit they'll be inside their own stadium this time, but if a similar thing happens in terms of Celtic getting away from them early and building momentum and opening up the gap at the top of the table, I'm sorry, but with the best will in the world, the next Rangers manager isn't going to get patience. The American owners aren't going to get patience. I don't know who they've been talking to or if they've been talking to anybody, but somebody somewhere should be having a word with them and telling them, guys, there's a hell of a job needing done here. We better get shifty on. Right. In terms of, where this Rangers manager hunt is at, another candidate, so obviously has had conversations with Rangers and does think that he's in the running for Rangers, is Russell Martin. But my information as of just a couple of hours ago this afternoon was that he's edging closer and closer to Leicester, and that he's not held back from Rangers for a number of days now. So in this void, Leicester are trying to get him to commit to them. And I think what the information from down south is, it's very likely that Leicester like to do things nicely packaged. So in other words, they'll want to announce that Ruud van Nistelrooy is leaving, but at the same time say, and here's the next guy. So if all of that is correct, then you could be looking at something happening there within the next 24 hours, probably at the latest with Leicester. And if Russell Martin is committed to it, because Rangers haven't been back on the phone, then there's another one to maybe score off. So I think the whereabouts of Ancelotti right now is key. And what's really interesting, Daniel, of course, is that 7 p.m. UK time, Carlo Ancelotti will be facing the Brazilian media, having been officially presented to them as the Brazil national coach. And I think some of our more clever operators have already tried to get into the ears of a few journalists that might be in that room and priming them with a question, which I don't think Davide Ancelotti is going to be top of the Brazilian news agenda. But hopefully we can find a friendly ally that might be capable of just running that past, because I think there will certainly be questions asked about what Carlo Ancelotti's backroom team is going to look like.
Aye. Before we go any further, Scott, our pal Gianni, exclusive, says Davide's dad's buying him an ice cream on the Copacabana today. My sources are saying. So there you go. What do you make of it, Scott?
See, just in terms of the process, Daniel, what I'm struggling to get my head around is, I understand that the takeover and the involvement of the Americans, whether it be Andrew Kavanagh or 49ers guy, Greta Steinson, I understand that obviously complicates matters in terms of Rangers as a club going to find a new manager. But Philippe Clement was sacked on the 23rd of February, I think. No, 13 weeks ago. I can't quite get my head around why the process is only starting now. And Rangers will tell you that, or certainly last week, they were telling you that the process is at an early stage. I don't really understand that, because Patrick Stewart as chief exec, Niels Coppin as recruitment director or technical director, whatever his title is, should they not have been out, identifying potential managerial candidates?
Got my information that they're not even involved in the process.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's Kevin Fairwell and Greta Steinson, and so you can only conclude from that is that the board decided that they didn't want to have the responsibility of taking on the next managerial appointment, and that they had to find themselves a sporting director, and that's his responsibility. And obviously Greta Steinson is speaking up on behalf of the incoming sort of 49ers.
How can you be the CEO of a football club and you've got no involvement in getting the next manager? And the thing about Fairwell, and that takes me on to my next point. I seen one of the comments coming up there saying, telling us that it's no difficult. Fairwell, Coppin and Steinson are dealing with the new signings. So basically, if it's Ancelotti, you've got a guy coming in, 35-year-old coach, coming into an environment in a country, in a league that he's never been in before, and then you've got 2 or 3 other guys. All right, Coppin's been there for a spell, but in Fairwell and Steinson, another 2 guys who have no clue about the league, the club, the environment, the demands, the expectations. But they're going to source all of these players and just hand them to David Ancelotti and say, away you go. I mean, look, I might be naive, but if I was a Rangers fan, I'd be seriously worried if that was the situation, get into a new season. A brand new manager who's never been in charge of a team before, coming in to work with a group of players that he's never had before, and a new sporting director just bringing players in and letting players go when the head coaches get no say in that. That to me would be astonishing for a club trying to somehow catch Celtic and somehow trying to go and win a title at the start of next season. And people say about Ange Postecoglou is the perfect example of how he came in late and it clicked right away. First thing Ange Postecoglou did was go and get his own men in. Had to go and get Kyogo and Joe Hart and the people that he'd identified to come in straight away. So, but if the guy's right what he's saying there, that just be left to Fairwell and Coppin and Steinson, then I don't know, that would worry me for the start of a new season with a new manager.
The other kind of complication in that, Scott, is so let's look at the candidates so far as we know. Steven Gerrard 1, Davide Ancelotti 2, Russell Martin 3. 3 guys we can only assume because we don't know what Ancelotti's managerial style, but the chances are that's three guys with three very, very, very different philosophies. Certainly Steven Gerrard and Russell Martin are not similar. So if you're a manager, and you're absolutely right in what Big Ange identified, was he knew what style of play that he wanted to adopt and his way forward for Celtic. And he was able to then say, right, a Kyogo, Rio Hatate, these guys are going to come in and they're just going to hit the ground running because I know that they're exactly what my style of football requires. I don't understand how you can have three different guys with three different philosophies and they're just going to, outsource the recruitment when three different managers would have three different opinions on three different players.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but again, it comes back to kind of how we started this conversation. There is so much work for Rangers to do, and I'm not sure that the penny has really dropped with the guys that are coming in. I'm sure it will drop, and this is why I've said it, that it feels a little bit, unless Rangers have got some master stroke up their sleeve, it does feel as if it's likely to have to get worse before it gets better, and only when they're really in and they really fully understand the environment they're working in, the relationship with supporters, the pressures, the demands on them. I think it might take them a little while just to get fully up to speed with that. I think it might come as a little bit of a surprise to them. But, is this a good thing for Rangers? Absolutely it is. Did Rangers need complete regime change? 100%.
Yeah.
But I do think that, this hasn't been a brilliant start in terms of the takeover has taken a whole lot longer than people on the inside expected it to. They don't have a manager in place. Time is running out. The squad is spread all over Europe and beyond just now on holidays. There's so much to do, and there just seems to be a real lack of urgency. And why is that? Have they missed out on certain specific targets that they thought they were getting? Are they looking elsewhere? Are they spreading it out? But you would think one way or another, there would have to be some clarity and some answers given to the supporters, you would think, in the coming days before the end of this week. But we have been saying that for a while now.
See, just to play devil's advocate before we move on from Rangers, Jimbo's come back saying that's the way the club is going. He's saying it's a head coach, it's not a manager we're bringing in. Is that not the kind of modern way the sporting director signs the players and the manager just sort of coaches them?
Yeah, but you need to have. The handy thing is, if you're going down that route, at least have a manager then, because see, when you get a list of players, and you've got a manager that's got his own ideas about how the game should be played and how he wants to set his team up, he's got to look at this list and say, well, I don't fancy him. He wouldn't play in my system. I'll take that one, or I'll take that one. So you need to have a conversation.
Aye, that's a fair point. Aye. Okay. I dare say we'll be back tomorrow with a Rangers update.
Daniel, you're saying that's the way the club, that's the way all the clubs operate now. I mean, do Celtic operate that way?
Very good point.
To me, Celtic have got a manager that runs the playing department and has a big influence on who comes in, who goes, and it seems to be working fairly well for them at the moment. So I'm not sure.
And that's why I've used the phrase, there seems like a little bit of a rush towards wanting to reinvent the wheel here. You don't need to be that clever. You don't need to be, super smart here. You just need to go and do the basics. And right now, Rangers aren't doing the basics. They've let go. Well, Czerny was arguably, I think, one of the top two players last season. He's away. They've got themselves legally bound into a deal to spend over €4 million on Oscar Cortez, who couldn't get a sniff of first team action because he wasn't deemed as being good enough. You've got guys like Rabbi Matondo on the way back in, having had loan spells. The squad's in an absolute mess. And look, at the risk of repeating myself, if they haven't realised the urgency, then somebody should have a word.
See, I know we need to move on from Rangers, but I'm actually really surprised at some of the comments we're getting. A lot of Rangers fans don't think it's particularly a pressing issue. Calm down, guys. These are no mugs. Celtic will be easy to catch. Nothing in their team to scare me. And Jimbo's saying time is run out. It's not even June. They come back to training in less than a month. They've not got a manager.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't understand how it can be any more urgent.
But all these plans should be being hatched and made and, acted upon and actioned weeks ago.
Aye.
Weeks, stroke months. And this is the problem. I get it because, our domestic season's only just finished. But if you want to be a credible force next season, if you want to stick up a fight to Celtic, you're going to have your ducks in a row. And Rangers, quite patently, their ducks aren't. They aren't even in the same postcode.
The ducks aren't in the same postcode. That's the headline. We'll move on from Rangers. Celtic. You wrote a very interesting opinion piece on Celtic earlier on today regarding the mood around the club and Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
A little bit surprised. There seems to be more negativity than I expected, or did I probably did expect a bit of negativity. Maybe there's been some stuff that feels a little bit more vicious than I would have expected in terms of the reaction to Celtic not winning another clean sweep. And I mentioned on the show last week, Daniel, this is a sort of a dangerous mindset for Celtic to be in, albeit victims of their own success. And it's Brendan Rodgers. He's the guy. He's turned Celtic into this trophy-winning machine. But I think it's not a healthy place to be in if on day one of the new season you think that only a treble would be par and anything less than a domestic clean sweep means the season's a bit of a failure. There's been a strong reaction to the Celtic performance at Hampden at the weekend. And there's some fans, and quite rightly, I suppose, saying, look, do you know what? This was coming, that Celtic's form towards the end of the season had dropped off a little bit. It didn't feel all that much as if this was coming at Pittodrie a couple of weeks before the end of the season when Celtic put the reserve side out and gave Aberdeen a hammering up there. But yeah, the St Mirren game in the final day, James Forrest has to do the 94th minute rescue act. So yeah, it's not been a brilliant end to the season, but it's been another brilliant season. Celtic have won the domestic league at relative canter. They've got a league and a League Cup double, and they were ultimately a penalty kick away from another clean sweep. And I do think, because of everything that we've just been discussing about where Rangers are at this moment in time with the takeover and a lack of planning for next season, I'm already fancying Celtic really strongly for the start of next season. I would look at it and say there's probably every chance that they'll either win another treble or get really, really close to another treble again next season. Because they are well run. They've got a terrific manager. Scott said Brendan Rodgers is the guy that's calling the shots. And they've already got a squad which is built to win trophies. Aye. And Rangers don't. So for that reason, I'm kind of contradicting myself there, because I'm saying for Celtic to win, any club to win a treble, it's a remarkable feat. And the problem that Celtic have given themselves, if you want to call it a first world problem maybe, but the problem they've given themselves is that the expectation levels around it, there are generations now, or at least a generation of Celtic supporters that hardly know anything else. It's just one trophy after the next, one triumph after the next, a treble after the next. And that can put an unreal sort of element of pressure onto Celtic that's unhelpful, because you know what, they're going along just fine.
Mm-hmm. We've had plenty of comments on Celtic's situation. Samantha here says Brendan Rodgers signing spent the whole season on the bench, except his 20 million duo, who didn't exactly set the world on fire. Signings haven't been great. He's relying heavily on signings. Big Ange brought in. This one as well, Dave says, get Kvistgaard signed. He's the real deal. He will make Ida look like the statue he is. On that, we've had stories in Record Sport Online regarding Celtic's striker search, which seems to be underway. Yusuf El Kachi is one player, apparently. He's in the second tier in Holland. Scored 23 goals this season for Telstar. He's one that apparently Celtic scouts were watching him on Friday. Kvistgaard obviously is the one that's been linked, feels like every day. He appeared to say goodbye to Brøndby in his what looks like his final game at the weekend. I mean, the striker, Scott, is it the striker that's crying out for Celtic to sign?
I'm not sure, Daniel. I mean, I'm sure they'll be looking at strikers, and Brendan Rodgers being Brendan Rodgers, I'm sure will want to add another forward to his squad. But you need to remember, Maida's been a revelation at centre forward for them, and the guy who's behind him was a 9 million, £10 million signing in Ida. Obviously, both of those guys were disappointing on Saturday, like most of the Celtic team. I thought Ida was poor the whole game, if I'm being honest. After I was sticking up for him on here last week, but don't think he did himself justice in the cup final. And Maida obviously misses a great chance near the end to go and win it. So it wasn't a great day for them. But I don't know. I mean, I don't see Celtic spending big money on another centre forward with Maida and Ida already there. I mean, unless they decide Maida's going back to playing wide every week and they need somebody, a different type to Ida, maybe going back to a Maida, Kyogo type, just to add to their kind of their firepower. But I'm not sure it'll be the absolute priority for Brendan Rodgers. Just going back to Celtic, I mean, I totally agree with everything Keith says just about the expectation levels and all that. I mean, I think it is a dangerous place to get into. I mean, I was at the game on Saturday. Definitely that feel about it that Celtic fans just expected to turn up and win. No, Aberdeen fans outsung them for 90 minutes. Actually, no, I know some Celtic fans that were there with like young kids and that. And they were like, they just couldn't believe they were walking away from Hampden with a defeat because they've never experienced it before.
How did that happen?
It's like this isn't meant to happen. So as a kind of generational thing, and Callum McGregor, I thought was really good after the game, as he always is. I mean, he was obviously devastated with the penalty miss, but he kind of fronted up and just a couple of the quotes. He spoke about how they're obviously hurting at the time and it'll take a bit of time to get over, but it was a reminder for Celtic, for the players, I think for the fans especially, that you need to earn every success you get. You need to earn every trophy you get, and Celtic didn't earn it on Saturday. It's as simple as that. And he actually touched on the League Cup final by suggesting they almost kind of get away with one, because I think most people, even that day, felt Rangers were probably the better team over the course, but then Celtic obviously prevailed on penalties. So it's obviously a sore one for them just now, but I think the big picture, it might actually do them no harm. Just that wee reminder that you can't, despite having the best squad and the best players, the most money, you can't just turn up and expect to win trophies. You do need to earn it, and they didn't do that on Saturday.
That was Brendan Rodgers' words, Scott, about earning it. You need to earn it. And, he's always on point, isn't he, with his messaging? And you can tell that that's something that he's hammered home in that dressing room. And then you've got the likes of, Cal McGregor coming out and repeating it. Because Brendan Rodgers is already beginning the process of, we're not going to make that mistake again next season. You boys better be on your toes. You boys better be ready. And that's the constant sort of the way the machine just keeps ticking over. It's good man management. He's getting his messages out to them, and he's going to let them go away, take a break with their families and the sun. But that message will be front and centre of their mind. And you can bet that Celtic will come back revigorated, determined. They know something's happening across the city. Nobody's got a clue what that's going to look like right now, but it's something. And I would expect Celtic really to rise to the challenge. Unlike Scott, I fully expect Celtic to sign a striker. I think that one of the points, if there's an accusation of complacency you could throw at Celtic, and maybe there is that when they did allow Kyogo to leave, they didn't have anybody else lined up in the January. So they were effectively a striker down, and their best striker down for the second half of the season. Is that complacency? Perhaps. Was it a little bit of arrogance? Maybe. Whereby they thought, well, we're so far in front anyway. We don't need to have anything lined up. I think that's a mistake, and I don't think it will be repeated in the summer. Fitzgarden has been on the list of targets for a number of years now, a number of seasons. In fact, Celtic, when they were initially interested in him, I think it was Mark Lowell had identified him. So we're going back a bit, and I think he would have been available then in the region of £6 million. But you can forget that. Bromby will be, somebody will need to bust the bank a little bit to get him out of there, although we fully expect that somebody will. So at our Celtic, and it comes back into the conversation we've had over the last few nights, Daniel, where what's Celtic's approach look like in the transfer market? Is it a continuation of this recent trend where Brendan Rodgers gets to push the boat out and spend a little bit more money than Celtic would previously have spent on particular targets? Or is it a diverse? Are they going to go back the other way, back to the model which has been so successful and so lucrative for them over the period, which is, speculate to accumulate, rather than spend £9 million on one player, spend $3 million each on three, and spread the sort of risk factor, because it's a difficult one, as I've said previously. If you're sitting down for an end of season appraisal with Brendan Rodgers in the boardroom right now, I think that is a genuine, legitimate question. You would say, Brendan, if we wanted to sell Adam Ida and Arnie Engels tomorrow, would we get our money back? And I'm not convinced that they would at this minute in time.
See, just sorry, Scott, but just to go back to the entitled sort of idea that you were putting up there, Robert, I put that comment up a minute ago. They didn't need to replace Kyogo. The season was done anyway. I mean, it wasn't. They didn't win the treble. So, and that kind of speaks to the point you're making, Scott. I think there's a lot of Celtic fans that just kind of thought, just breezed away with another sweep.
I was just going to say, in terms of talking about who they need to bring in, and strikers and all that. I mean, if Maida is now a striker, a centre forward, and Brendan Rodgers has said he's always known that he was a centre forward. If you think Jota is going to be injured for a good chunk of next season, certainly at the start, we're talking about maybe January at the least. James Forrest coming into the last year of his deal, obviously getting towards the kind of end of his career. Yang, who came on at the weekend and was really disappointing. I just don't think he's up to the standard required at Celtic. I don't know whether they'll look to move him on, but not up to it. And Kuhn. Now, Kuhn at the start of this season was obviously outstanding. I mean, we're talking about him Player of the Year up until the new year. I think he's getting so far off the boil, Kuhn. It's been incredible towards the end of the season. And it was the same story again on Saturday. If you take all of that into consideration, I think the priority will be wide players for Brendan Rodgers. Now, obviously, Jota's injury kind of skews it a wee bit because you expect him to come back, and he's been a big signing for them. So does that mean you maybe sign one, get another one on loan? I'm not sure, but I think they look at the overall picture and that kind of attacking third. I think wide players will be one of his priorities in the summer, 100%.
You mentioned this with Keith Yang, and we've got a lot of comments. Get Yang in the same taxi scales. I think you said, Keith, I think it'd be the last time we see Yang for Celtic.
I think that might have been Mick, but I fully agreed and endorsed it. He's just never convinced me. I think he's got a lovely touch and he can do nice things, but seems to me to be one of these players who enjoys coming on when the hard work's been done, Celtic are ahead in a game, and then he can go on and look quite good. I mean, I think he has. That's probably unfair. I think there have been occasions over the season where he's come off the bench and Celtic have not been in a great place, and he's injected a little bit of something. But he's hit or miss, and it's too many misses for me. I don't see him.
Rodgers was exasperated with him at the weekend, wasn't he? You could see him touch.
Yeah, even just his positioning, his work rate, it was. So I think he's put himself in an awkward spot there. I do think Scott's right. I do think Celtic were looking in the wider areas, but I do expect Maida to revert to being one of those wider options. That's a reason why I think they will get centre forward. So at least one winger, I would have thought. Are we going to see Jota next season at all? I don't know. Fingers crossed that he'll have a kind of bump-free recovery. But that's a bad one. And this is a guy that hasn't played a lot of football over the last period as well. So he's going to be rusty if he does make it back, at some point in the new year. So maybe a couple of wingers. You've got James Forrest, who just, he keeps going. He's a guy that I don't think anybody would be in a rush to push him towards the exit door. He's a guy that can make a contribution. You've got Maeda. If you get the best version of Nicholas Kuhn, you've got a top player. If you get the one that we've seen over the last few weeks of the season, I'm not so sure. But you would think that Kuhn, whether or not it was just a long season and whether it was just getting, a bit, exhausted or the tank was emptying towards the end of it, I don't know. But they get the Kuhn back that started last season. They've got a real player. So maybe one winger and a striker. Then I think you might need a centre midfielder, because I feel that Rio Hatate might feel as if his time here is up. And I think they probably need a centre half as well.
And you saw how much they missed Hatate at the weekend, Keith.
He's a good player. Of course you're going to miss him. I mean, we talk about Celtic squad and we talk about being able to replace quality with quality. But there are some players who just have a little bit more quality than others. And he comes right into that bracket, doesn't he? No. Yes, Celtic have got good quality options, but none of them can quite do what Hatate does. So I think Celtic need to find a player of a similar ilk in this summer's market. And I think if Brendan Rodgers could get that, a winger, striker, centre mid and a centre half, I think he'll feel as if he's in good shape for next season.
Lex in the comment section says Jota's going to reform Lamb, so there's another exclusive for us, guys. Rebel says Telly was back next week. Just before we move on from Celtic, then, is both your gut feeling that Celtic will spend a significant amount this summer on several different positions?
I've no doubt about it. Celtic always do, Daniel. I mean, sometimes in fact they can frustrate supporters because sometimes they leave it a little bit later than they should, but they always spend. What I think is going to be the fascinating bit is, do they pay the premium, as we've been talking about, for Brendan Rodgers kind of scale signings that he wants, or do they revert to the kind of model that Brendan Rodgers was sort of uncomfortable? He was more than uncomfortable with it, wasn't he? He came out and said so.
What do you think, Keith? Do you get the feeling they will?
I genuinely don't know, and that's what I'm going to find interesting. I think there's an interesting argument to be had, isn't there? Mm-hmm. I'm sure the board could turn around and say, well, look, Brendan, let's get it right. If we spend 15 million here on 5 players, the model proves, because it's worked so many times, that 3 or 4 of these players come good, and where they might have cost 3 million quid, 5 million quid, we can sell them for 15. The Matt O'Reilly model. But Brendan Rodgers has put forward a very different case, that he wants them to spend that little bit more, to go and buy a little bit more, proven oven-ready players who aren't projects. And to an extent, it's backfired on him, because Adam Ida has really failed and struggled to live up to that price tag. I'm not even sure it's just a price tag thing. I think people use that as an excuse for him. I'm not sure that he's properly adjusted into the whole Celtic culture, and probably needs a right big summer and come back refreshed and new and revigorated for the season. And Arne Engels, I like him. Good player. Has had some terrific games, some not very good ones. But again, as I said to you, if you took him to the market today, are you going to get your money back? I think there's loads of potential for him to grow. And I think he will do that. And Brendan Rodgers is the best guy in the business for sprinkling his magic dust on these guys and helping them to develop and mature and become better and improve themselves. I think Arne Engels will need to do a bit of that, but I do think Ida as well. And that's why it's a fascinating one, because the board could turn around and say, well, Peter, that's not smart. There's money that we've set aside, £20 million for 2 players. Not sure we could get it back if we sold them both tomorrow. Whereas our old model, we were caked. There was money flying in for all directions. So who wins that argument? That'll be interesting.
You didn't mention Trusty there. Obviously, he came in for $6 million.
Yeah,
he sat on the bench.
At the bench. Yeah.
So, just quickly, I mean, in terms of what they spend next summer, it'll also surely depend on if they get a big bid in for somebody.
Yeah.
No, if whether it's a Maida, a Hattati, or even a Kuhn, I suppose you could argue. I mean, they could get a big bid for one of them that's tempting, and then that kind of shifts everything in terms of what they go and spend.
Guess time will tell. Time's getting away from us, guys, so we need to move on. Elsewhere in Scottish football, let me read a few of these comments out to you. Jack says, the Kettlewell appointment has well and truly ruined my summer. A Motherwell failure, the definition of a very uninspired appointment. Lauren says, it's a strange appointment. The money from McInnes could have seen something a bit more exciting. And Tim says, I'm a Motherwell fan and Killie supporters should get ready for some eye-bleeding football, self-indulgent, repetitive post-match interviews. Good luck. I have to be honest, guys, I'm a wee bit taken aback by the kind of pushback from Killie fans at Stuart Kettlewell's appointment today.
Yeah, listen, you can kind of see where they're coming from, because Billy Bowie has this track record, well, certainly in the appointments of Steve Clark and Derek McInnes. They were sort of box office appointments. And Stuart Kettlewell isn't going to fill that same bracket as a box office. I think he'll do a really good job for them. And I'm pretty sure that part of the logic is kind of floated the idea last week is that, with the boy Watson there, that Kettlewell is a guy who was prepared to put Lennon Miller, fast track him into the first team. And I think Lennon Miller has spoken about the influence that Stuart Kettlewell had on him. So maybe Billy Bowie's taking that sort of approach with Kettlewell, that he feels Kilmarnock have got a decent academy and there's a chance here for kids to get a pathway into the first team, and Kettlewell has that on his CV.
I don't disagree. Aside from Watson, I mean, I haven't seen too much of him, but Chris Buck's son, is it Cole Buck, who came into the team at the end of last season, apparently he's outstanding. I've actually spoken to Derek McInnes about him previously. Real high hopes for him. You would like to think a guy like Kettlewell could really aid his development and get him into the first team. So I do think that's behind the appointment. I quite like Stuart Kettlewell. I agree with Jack. I mean, he might not be box office, but I do think he's a real safe pair of hands, and I'm not sure what Killie are expecting to achieve next season, because I think the way the league is just now, you look at Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, that's 5 right away. Look at Dundee United have done this season. Really difficult to even break into that top 6 now for a club like Kilmarnock. And you look at the squad, they might lose a couple again this summer. Danny Armstrong obviously looks as if he's going to go. One of the better players, Stuart Finlay, might be another. I think it's going to be really difficult, and they need a guy who knows the league, knows that end of the league, and as Jacko says, is prepared to put young players in and get the best out of them. I think he did a decent job at Motherwell, and I think he'll do a decent job at Killie as well.
Yeah,
there's obviously he's left Motherwell under a cloud, and that's why you've got some sort of spiky comments from Motherwell fans for Stuart Kettlewell's concerned. I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting one when Kilmarnock's first trip to Fir Park next season.
Certainly will.
It could be spicy, aye. So yeah, look, I think you'll do fine, but I think Scott's right as well. And what are Kilmarnock's genuine expectations? What are they demanding? I think Billy Bowie's appointed a manager there that will safeguard their top flight status, and I think that's priority number one.
Aye. And just before we finish, guys, Scott McDermott and Billy Gilmore have been welcomed into Napoli's immortality, because we've talked about it a few times in the Hotline Live. Napoli have won Serie A. They beat Cagliari 2-0 on Friday night. They beat Champions League finalists Inter Milan to the Scudetto by 1 point. Just an amazing achievement. I mean, I don't know either of the guys, but I just feel so proud of them.
Napoli's,
is that not right?
No, Napolitan.
Yeah, so it is. Hang on, Gianni, get involved here. Napoli's, is that no hang? No. Okay.
Is that no for Nepal?
So it is.
You got it.
Right, if we can cut this out of the podcast, that'd be great.
Listen, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant story. I was watching it. I was thrilled for them. McTominay's goal was,
outstanding.
Storybook stuff, isn't it? It's unreal. But when you think about it, we've got an Italian Cup winner in Lewis Ferguson. We've got 2 Italian league winners in McTominay and Billy Gilmore. We've got an English league winner in Andy Robertson. I said a while ago, this is a real golden age for our for our young talent. They're not all so young. Andy Robertson, a lot of people are questioning whether he'll stay. I think he will. But in terms of the standard that our guys are achieving now on the biggest stages with the biggest clubs, it really is a joy. And that's why I think there's a bit of pressure now coming on Steve Clarke. He's qualified us for 2 European Championships. But if this lot don't qualify for the World Cup, it's going to feel as if that was an opportunity missed.
We need it to World Cup. It's been too long.
Well, with this group of players, I mean, when was the last time? I can't remember the last time we had players operating at this level. So yeah, it's kind of, it will build a little bit of pressure, won't it, and expectations, because these guys belong to be playing in the World Cup now.
Aye. And Gianni pointing out there that Josh Doig won Serie B as well. Good point. He's in the Scotland squad too.
Max Johnson's just won a title in Austria as well. I know it's maybe not the same standard, but that's been a great move for him so far as well. So he's on the verge of the squad. You think of Lennon Miller coming in? There's definitely reasons to be optimistic. But I'll say it again. That first World Cup qualifier, if the midfield 3 is no McTominay, Gilmour or Ferguson, we need to chuck it, honestly.
Especially with Callum McGregor now going, that it just feels like it makes perfect sense.
It does.
Kenny McLean has just come in and filled that position. So I
Kenny
would say
McLean will be in there.
Kenny McLean starts. Listen, Kenny McLean's a good player as well. He's never done Scotland a bad turn, that's for sure. And he's been a real good contributor to Steve Clarke. He's one of Steve Clarke's favourites. But I think it is time to take the brakes off here, isn't it? If we've got guys that are winning trophies in the top league in Italy and in cup competitions, it's time to unleash them. It's time to go.
Sorry, go on, Keith. Sorry.
No, listen. The only other thing that I thought we should discuss before we go, Daniel, was this is a big, significant day for Hearts. In the last half hour before we came on, I think something like 92.8% of the foundation of Hearts voted in favour of Tony Bloom's investment. He'll now take up a 29% stake in the club, and he's going to put £10 million into the coffers. I'd imagine that Derek McInnes is really pleased about this. And I think, in terms of what we were saying around about the Derek McInnes appointment, this feels as if Hearts are going to give it a real go. With Derek McInnes in charge of the thing, with Tony Bloom putting his money and his analytics up, you really get the feeling that Hearts have a real chance of laying down something significant next season.
In the comments, we had this one: Rangers with huge investment, Hearts under Tony Bloom with Jamestown Analytics will shake up the league. We've had a few comments like that, Scott. I mean, do you think Hearts... how do you think Hearts will go on under McInnes?
I think they'll do well under McInnes. I think that's a great appointment. Said that from the beginning. And Keith's right, it's brilliant for Hearts. It does feel as if something's kind of brewing there and they're going to give it a right good go. I mean, I was looking at some Hearts fans today on social media. I mean, they're already dreaming, maybe not for next season, but I think they're looking at Union Saint-Gilloise. I think it's 8 years since Tony Bloom first got involved with Union Saint-Gilloise, and they've just went and won the title against the odds. So we're saying that's going to happen here, but it just gives the Hearts punters a bit of hope, bit of optimism, bit of excitement going into a new season. And after the campaign they've just had, they certainly need it.
And I know my famous catchphrase is "and finally," but really, finally this time, Ross County or Livingston tonight, guys. Who is going to be in the Premiership next season?
Livingston.
One each from the first leg. Livia, Keith?
Yeah.
Scott?
So tight. I'll go Ross County.
I think Ross County as well. I feel like they're made for these games. At home as well.
But their form going into these games has been atrocious.
Aye,
And I'm afraid I've seen it, we've all seen it time and time again. There is one team in the top flight that gets itself into a tailspin and it just can't drag itself out of it. I think it would be almost like a miraculous escape if Ross County could suddenly find the performance that gets them out of trouble. I think they're in trouble. And it's an experienced Livingston side with a manager that knows what he's doing, knows the club inside and out. I just think, listen, that wasn't the worst result in the world for Ross County in the first game, but I don't think this job is done quite yet. I think, I think Livingston might be back in the Premier League next season, along with a plastic pitch.
Gianni says Ross County are a stick on. Keith's acting up, and he says you're in bad form after tipping Estonia to win Eurovision. I think on that note, guys, that brings us to the end of Monday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thanks so much for all the comments.
I should have tipped Nepal.
Thank you to all of our Nepalese viewers as well, and anyone else Neapolitan. Thanks for watching. Thank you for all the comments. We'll be back to it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Keith, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Night, guys.
And thanks for watching. Cheers.